Hello friends, welcome in our YouTube channel. Friends, in today's video we will inform you of all the facts of the movie The Fast and the Furious. In this video we will inform you of all the details such as film characters, effects, artists, film budget, and box office. If you are new on our channel, the channel will subscribe and support. Let's grow up toward the movie's review. In the middle of the night, on a highway in Los Angeles, three black modified 1995 Honda Civics follow a semi-trailer truck. One of the masked pursuers breaks a windshield with a crossbow and grapples himself to the seat. He subdues the driver, and the Civics commandeer the truck, managing to steal over $6 million in merchandise of TVS and electronics that were on the truck. LAPD officer Brian O'Connor, Paul Walker, is sent undercover on a joint LAPD-FBI investigation to apprehend and convict the truck hijackers. Brian uses his cover job at the Racer's Edge, an aftermarket parts shop, to make connections and infiltrate the local street racing scene. One night, on a local street racing gathering, he enters his modified 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse RS420A into an illegal race with Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel, Edwin, J. Rule, and Rio the rapper, bartering the pink slips, due that he doesn't have enough money to bet in the race, asking for cash and respect if he wins the race. Brian, due to his lack of knowledge in racing, fires too much nitrous oxide, and he pressures the Eclipse's engine, frying it, resulting in the car automatically spinning out, which also causes Brian to lose to Dominic's modified 1993 Mazda RX-7. Although Dominic mocks him in front of the gathered racers and viewers, Brian gains Dominic's respect, however, when he arrives in time to prevent Dominic from being caught by police responding to the race. As they flee from the scene, Dominic and Brian accidentally venture into Southern California's Little Saigon, encountering Dominic's rival, Johnny Tran, Rick Yoon, along with his cousin Lance Nguyen, Reggie Lee, and his gang, who open fire with submachine guns, rupturing a nitrous tank and destroying the Eclipse in the resulting explosion, but Brian and Dominic leave. Later on, Dom invites Brian to a party at his house, where he encounters with Dominic's friend, Vince, Matt Schulze, who dislikes Brian because of Dominic's sister, Mia, Jordana Brewster, who takes interest in Brian. At the party, Brian also meets Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, Dom's longtime girlfriend, and the rest of the Dom's crew, Leon, Johnny Strong, an expert mechanic and also Dom's old friend, and Jesse, Chad Lindbergh, a geek specialized in electronics. The next day, Brian delivers a totaled 1994 Toyota Supra to Dominic's shop and offers his talents as a driver to repay the debt incurred from losing the race. Brian begins dating Mia while Dom and the rest of the crew goes to work restoring the Supra. Dominic also invites Brian to his house, showing him a 1970 Dodge Charger which he built with his father. Dom tells him that his dad was a stock car driver. One day, his father was forced into a wall by another racer. He met the driver a week later and beat him up with a 3/4-inch Torco wrench. This caused Dom to have a record, and he was forbidden to return to that track for life. Dom explains to Brian, "I live my life a quarter mile at a time. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free." One night, Brian is checking under the local garages, hoping to find the Civics. Just as he was leaving without finding anything, he is knocked out by Vince. He is dragged to Dom, who asks Brian to reason himself at gunpoint. Brian lies saying at the Racer's Edge. Hector Noel Guglielmi, the man who organized the race the other night, ordered 3 modified engines, leaving him in a false suspicion that he is planning something big, probably for Tran. Dom takes him to Little Saigon, where they raid another garage. Inside, they discover that there is no engines inside the cars, but Brian notices shipment of electronics in the garage. They hide as Tran and Lance arrive, torturing the mechanic to give him the engines they requested. They manage to escape without being seen. This convinces Brian that Tran's crew is behind the hijacks and lets Sergeant Tanner, Ted Levine, and FBI Special Agent Bilkins, Tom Barry, know. The SWAT team, along with Brian, raids Tran's house and arrests him and his cousin. But it is shown up that the electronics are legally bought, and that the only charges against them is minor parking tickets and unpaid speeding fines, forcing them to set them free as their ransom is paid. Bilkins and Tanner, Brian's superiors, return to their original theory that Dominic and his crew are the perpetrators. Tanner warns Brian not to let his feelings for Mia or his friendship with Dominic cloud his judgment and lead him too far from the case, and Bilkins, angered about the situation, gives Brian only 36 hours to break the case or he will be sacked from the job and lose his entire career. Meanwhile, with the Supra now fully prepped to race, Brian asks Dominic for information regarding his income, citing that the shop alone wouldn't pay for all his racing expenditures and that he wants to be in whatever he is doing. Instead, Dominic gives Brian an invitation to Race Wars, a massive street racing event held in the desert, and informs him they'll talk once Brian has proven his worth on the strip. On Race Wars, Jesse, wanting to impress his dad in jail and Dom, bets his modified 1995 Volkswagen Jetta A3, and Tran bets his modified 1999 Honda S2000. Jesse loses, panics, and flees the track, prompting Tran to confront Dominic and demand that he retrieves the car for him. Dominic refuses and Tran accuses him of informing on him, causing him to be humiliated in front of his entire family. In response, Dominic brutally beats Tran and is pulled off by Vince and 2 security guards. That night, Brian notices Dominic and his crew leaving the Race Wars. Brian realizes that Dominic is the hijacker and confesses to Mia his status as an undercover cop. She is angry at Brian, but he says to her that everything that he said to her about their relationship is true, and convinces her to come with him to save her brother and his friends from the armed truck drivers, and they leave on the Highway 65 outside LA to catch up with Dominic and the rest of the group. Meanwhile, the attempted hijacking goes wrong when the truck driver fights back with a shotgun, causing Letty and Vince severe injuries. Brian tracks their location by triangulating Dominic's cell phone signal and works with Mia to get Vince off the truck. Brian, realizing that Vince is in a critical condition, makes the difficult decision to blow his cover to the crew by phoning in for a medevac, revealing to Dominic that he is a police officer. The revelation enrages Dominic, but he contains himself and flees with Leon, Letty, and Mia as the medevac arrives for Vince. Brian follows Dominic to his house and holds him at gunpoint to prevent him from fleeing, but Dominic explains that he is going to look for Jesse before Tran finds him. Just when Dominic points his shotgun to him, Jesse arrives, apologizing for his actions at Race Wars and pleading for Dominic's help. Moments later, Tran and Lance arrive on their bikes and perform a drive-by shooting, killing Jesse. Brian and Dominic chase them, with Dom in his Charger. He forces Lance's motorcycle off the road, severely injuring him, while Brian, after a short chase, manages to shoot and kill Tran. Afterwards, Brian and Dominic engage in a drag race, narrowly avoiding a passing train. Despite making the train track jump, Dominic crashes into a semi-truck and rolls his car twice. Brian pulls out Dom, with Dom assuming that he will be apprehended. But instead of arresting him, Brian hands over the keys to the Supra and lets him escape, making good on his promise to deliver a 10-second car. Dom escapes in Brian's car. Outside Los Angeles, a heist crew driving 3 heavily modified Honda Civics hijack a semi-truck trailer carrying electronic goods and escape into the night along Terminal Island Freeway. Meanwhile, LAPD officer Brian O'Connor is sent undercover as part of a joint LAPD-FBI task force to locate the crew responsible. Brian investigates Toretto's Market and Cafe, managed by Mia, sister of notorious street racer Dominic "Dom" Toretto. When Dom's crew arrives, Vince, Leon, Jesse, and Dom's girlfriend Letty, Vince becomes suspicious of Brian and picks a fight with him. As a result of the fight, Dom threatens to fire Brian from his undercover job at Harry's garage and ban him from the market, but Harry manages to reason with him and keep Brian employed. Brian brings a modified 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse RS to a car meet, hoping to find a lead on the heist crew. Dom arrives in his Mazda RX-7 and initiates a race. Without credibility, Brian wagers his car. He, Dom, and 2 other drivers race. Brian's car malfunctions, and Dom wins the race, but LAPD officers arrive, forcing Dom to flee. Brian rescues him, helping him escape, inadvertently venturing into territory held by a rival racing gang led by Johnny Tran and his cousin Lance. Tran and Lance destroy the Eclipse, and the two are forced to return to Dom's home on foot. Dom reiterates that Brian still owes him a 10-second car. Brian delivers a decrepit MK4 Toyota Supra to Dom's garage, and the crew begins the process of restoring it. At the same time, he begins dating Mia and looks into Tran's finances. Hector comes to Harry's garage and speaks to Brian with the intent to buy performance parts for Honda Civics. While Brian is investigating one of Hector's garages, looking for the Civics that have been involved in the heist, Brian is discovered by Dom and Vince. He convinces the latter he is researching Tran's gang's vehicles in preparation for race wars. In the process, the three discover a large number of electronic goods which Brian reports to his superiors, LAPD Sergeant Tanner and FBI Special Agent Bilkins. Tran is arrested but is found to have acquired the goods legally. An enraged Bilkins berates Tanner and Brian. Bilkins then informs Brian that the truck drivers have begun arming themselves to kill the hijackers and notifies him that he has 36 hours to find them, whom the former believes was Dom all along. Brian and Dom attend race wars, where Jesse wagers and loses his father's MK3 Volkswagen Jetta in a drag race against Tran, driving his Honda S2000. Jesse flees upon losing, resulting in a confrontation between Dom and Tran. Tran accuses Dom of being a narc, and the two fight before being broken up. That evening, Brian witnesses Dom leaving with his crew to carry out the heist. Brian reveals his identity to a distraught Mia, convincing her to help him knowing their danger. Dom, Letty, Vince, and Leon attempt to hijack the truck. The driver fires on Vince, critically injuring him and running Letty off the road in the process. Brian and Mia catch up to help, but Brian is forced to reveal his identity when he calls for medevac to save Vince. Dom, Mia, Letty, and Leon flee the scene before the police arrive. Later, Brian arrives to arrest Dom, but the latter demands he leave in order to save Jesse from the danger he's in from Tran's gang. Jesse arrives pleading for help, but he is gunned down by Tran and Lance on motorcycles. Brian forgoes his arrest of Dom and gives chase to Tran and Lance, with Dom getting into his father's 1970 Dodge Charger, RT, to pursue Tran and avenge Jesse. During the chase, Dom runs Lance off the road before Brian accidentally kills Tran. Brian then pursues Dom, and the two agree to a quarter-mile race over a railroad crossing. The race narrowly ends in a draw, but Dom is T-boned by a passing truck. Instead of arresting him, Brian hands over the keys to his Supra, reminding Dom he was owed a 10-second car. He walks away as Dom drives off. In the post-credits scene, Dom is seen driving through Baja California, Mexico, in a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS. In 2000, actor Paul Walker had worked with director Rob Cohen on The Skulls. Cohen secured a deal with producer Neal H. Moritz for an untitled action film for Universal Pictures and approached Walker and asked him to suggest his dream action film. Walker suggested a mashup of the films Days of Thunder, 1990, and Donnie Brasco, 1997. Soon thereafter, Cohen and Moritz brought him the Vibe magazine article Racer X by Ken Lee, published in May 1998, which detailed underground street racing operating in New York City, and suggested a story set to follow Walker as an undercover cop tasked with infiltrating the world of underground street racing. The screenplay was originally developed by Gary Scott Thompson and Eric Bergquist. David Ayer was brought into the project to help rework the script. Ayer changed it from the mostly white and suburban story set in New York to a diverse one set in Los Angeles. Upon being offered the role, Walker signed on immediately. Eminem was offered the role but turned it down to work on the film 8 Mile, 2002, and Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale were also considered. Originally, the studio told the producers they would greenlight the film if they could get Timothy Olyphant to play the role of Dominic Toretto. Olyphant, however, who had starred in the previous year's car-themed film Gone in 60 Seconds, declined the role. Olyphant said that he turned down the role as he thought the film would be stupid. Moritz instead suggested Vin Diesel, who had to be convinced to take the role, even though he had only played supporting roles up to that point. The role of Mia Toretto was originally written for Eliza Dushku, who declined it, and Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jessica Biel, Kirsten Dunst, and Natalie Portman auditioned before Jordana Brewster was cast. Moritz had difficulty choosing between the titles Racer X after the article, Redline, Race Wars, and Street Wars, but was ultimately inspired by a documentary on American International Pictures, which included the 1954 film The Fast and the Furious. Moritz was traded use of some stock footage to its director, Roger Corman, in exchange for a license to use the title. The Fast and the Furious remembers summer movies from the days when they were produced by American International and played in drive-ins on double features. It's slicker than films like Grand Theft Auto, but it has the same kind of pirate spirit. It wants to raid its betters and carry off the loot. It doesn't have a brain in its head, but it has some great chase scenes and includes the most incompetent cop who ever went undercover. Brian hangs out there because he wants to break into street racing and because he likes Mia. Toretto's gang is hostile to him, beats him up, disses him, and he comes back for more. He ends up winning Toretto's friendship by saving him from the cops. The races involve cars 4 abreast at speedway speeds down city streets. This would be difficult in Chicago, but is easy in Los Angeles because, as everybody knows, LA has no traffic and no cops. Actually, Brian is a cop, assigned to investigate a string of multi-million-dollar truck hijackings. The hijackers surround an 18-wheeler with 3 Honda Civics, shoot out the window on the passenger side, fire a cable into the cab, and climb into the truck at high speeds. This makes for thrilling action sequences when it works, and an even more thrilling action sequence when it doesn't, in a chase scene that approaches but does not surpass the climax of The Road Warriors. During the chases, we observe that there is no other traffic on the highway, just the trucks and the Hondas. Anyone who has ever driven a Honda next to an 18-wheeler will know that a Humvee is the wiser choice, but never mind. And only a hopeless realist would observe that a truck is a dangerous and inefficient way of stealing VCRs. In Chicago, the crooks are more prudent and steal from parked trucks, warehouses, and other unmoving targets. Toretto should try it. Anyway, Brian at first seems just like a guy who wants to race, but is revealed as a cop in an early scene, although not so early that the audience has not guessed it. He works for a unit that has its undercover headquarters in a Hollywood house, and as he enters it, his boss says, "Eddie Fisher built this house for Elizabeth Taylor in the 1950s. I am thinking, this is almost certainly true, or it would not be said in a movie so stingy with dialogue. And is this the first time Paul has seen his unit's office? One of the nice things about the movie is the way it tells a story and explains its characters. It's a refreshing change from such no-plot, all-action movies as Gone in 60 Seconds. We learn a little about Toretto's father and his childhood, and we see Paul and Mia falling in love. Although I think in theory you are not supposed to date the sister of a guy you are undercover to investigate. Michelle. Rodriguez, the star of the underappreciated boxing movie Girl Fight, co-stars as a member of the hijack gang, and gets to land one solid right on a guy's jaw, just to keep her credentials. The Fast and the Furious is not a great movie, but it delivers what it promises to deliver, and knows that a chase scene is supposed to be about something more than special effects. It has some of that grandiose we've treasured in movies like this ever since Rebel Without a Cause. I live my life a quarter mile at a time, Toretto tells Brian. For those 10 seconds, I'm free. And hey, even for the next 30 seconds, he's decelerating. The Fast and the Furious is a 2001 action film directed by Rob Cohen from a screenplay by Gary Scott Thompson, Eric Bergquist, and David Ayer, based on the Vibe magazine article Racer X. The first installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, it stars Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, Rick Yoon, Chad Lindbergh, Johnny Strong, and Ted Levine. In the film, undercover cop Brian O'Connor, Walker, infiltrates a street racing crew to investigate a series of hijackings and finds himself developing a complex friendship with the group's leader, Dominic Toretto, Diesel. The Fast and the Furious entered development in late 1998. Its concept inspired by Lee's Vibe article about illegal street racing. Cohen and Bellinger wrote the original screenplay that year, with Ayer hired soon after. Various actors were considered for the roles of O'Connor and Toretto, with Walker cast in 1998 and then Diesel in early 1999, with the pair attending actual street races in preparation for the film. Principal photography began in July 2000 and finished that October, with filming locations primarily including Los Angeles and the surrounding area in Southern California. Record producer BT was hired to compose the score. The Fast and the Furious premiered at the Mon Village Theater in Los Angeles on June 18, 2001, and was released in the United States on June 22 by Universal Pictures. Critics praised the action sequences and the performances, but criticized its story. The film is considered Diesel's, Walker's, and Rodriguez's breakthrough roles. The Fast and the Furious grossed $207 million worldwide on a $38 million budget. The film's success was followed by the sequel Too Fast, Too Furious, and spawned a franchise of 8 films, TV series, and several video games. So guys, it was the review of today's movie, The Fast and the Furious. Hope you liked the video and get a lot of information. If the video looks good, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.